Welcome to my Channel Deep Sleep Mission-DSM. As we begin, I would be delighted if you could share your location in the comments below. It's truly inspiring to witness how far this content travels and to connect with viewers from across the world. The first note appeared on a Tuesday morning, tucked between the pages of my planner, like it had always belonged there. My own handwriting stared back at me, but I swear on everything I hold dear, I never wrote those words. Goodbye, Sarah. I'm sorry it had to end this way. My coffee mug slipped from my hand, crashed against the kitchen tile, brown liquid spreading like a muddy river across the white floor. My name is Sarah, yes, but who was saying goodbye, and why was it in my handwriting? If you've ever found something you absolutely know you didn't create, something that shouldn't exist, then you understand the ice that crawled up my spine that morning. But here's the thing that'll make your skin crawl. This was just the beginning. Our story begins now. Living alone in my Portland apartment had always felt like freedom. 28 years old, working remotely as a graphic designer. I had everything figured out, or so I thought. That Tuesday morning changed everything. After cleaning up the coffee disaster, I held the note up to the light, studied every curve and line. It was definitely my handwriting, down to the way I looped my lowercase g and the slight slant to the right, but I hadn't written it. I was sure of that. I'd gone to bed early the night before, no drinks, no medication that might make me forget. Just me, my laptop, and a Netflix documentary about ocean life. Nothing that would lead to this. The paper felt old somehow, yellowed at the edges like it had been sitting in that planner for years. But I'd only bought the planner last month. I remember because it had tiny succulents printed on the cover, and I'm terrible at keeping real plants alive. I called in sick to work. How could I focus on designing logos when my own handwriting was playing tricks on me? I spent the morning tearing through my apartment, checking every notebook, every scrap of paper, looking for more notes, finding nothing. Maybe I was stressed. Maybe I'd written it weeks ago and forgotten. The mind plays tricks sometimes, right? By afternoon, I'd almost convinced myself it was nothing, just a weird coincidence. Maybe I'd been practicing calligraphy or something equally forgettable. I made chamomile tea, settled onto my couch, tried to work on a client project. That's when I found the second note. It was in my bathroom, taped to the mirror. I know. It wasn't there when I brushed my teeth that morning. I know because I'd spent 5 minutes examining a potential pimple on my chin. The note covered that exact spot. Sarah, you were always too curious for your own good. Some doors should stay closed. My handwriting, again. The apartment suddenly felt too small, too quiet. I could hear my neighbor's TV through the thin walls, some game show with canned laughter. Normal sounds that now felt alien and wrong. I grabbed my phone to call someone, anyone, but stopped. What would I say? Hey, I'm finding notes I wrote to myself but don't remember writing them. They'd think I was losing it. Maybe I was. I took photos of both notes with my phone. Evidence of what, I wasn't sure, but I needed proof this was happening. The rest of the day passed in a blur of anxiety and confusion. I checked every room, every drawer, every pocket. No more notes. I even called my mom in Michigan just to hear a familiar voice. Didn't mention the notes, of course. Just chatted about her garden and Dad's new fishing boat. Normal things, safe things. That night, I barely slept. Every sound made me jump. The refrigerator humming, the upstairs neighbor's footsteps, a siren in the distance. I left all the lights on, kept checking my phone for the time. 2:17 a.m., 3:42 a.m., 4:05 a.m. When morning finally came, I found the third note. This one was in my coffee maker, actually inside it, where I put the grounds. Soggy, but readable. Sarah, stop looking for answers. You won't like what you find. 3 notes, 3 warnings, all in my handwriting. I did what any reasonable person would do. I called my best friend Katie. She came over immediately, still in her pajama pants and oversized blazer's hoodie. That's true friendship, showing up for someone's mental breakdown without changing clothes first. "Okay, walk me through this again," Katie said, examining the notes I'd laid out on my kitchen table. "You found these, but you didn't write them?" I know how it sounds. It sounds like you need more sleep. When's the last time you took a real break from work? I wanted to argue, to make her understand, but how could I? The notes looked exactly like my handwriting. Even I was starting to doubt myself. Katie stayed for coffee, made me promise to see a doctor if more notes appeared. After she left, I tried to focus on work, but concentration was impossible. Every few minutes, I'd check another spot. Under the couch cushions, inside my shoes, between the pages of books I hadn't opened in months. Then I remembered something. My apartment had a security camera in the hallway. Maybe it caught someone entering my place? I practically ran to the building manager's office. Mr. Chen was watering his perpetually dying fern when I burst in. "I need to see the security footage from yesterday and last night," I said, probably looking as frantic as I felt. "Is everything okay, Sarah? Did something happen?" I think someone might have been in my apartment." His face turned serious. We spent the next hour reviewing footage, me entering at 6 p.m. after grocery shopping, Mrs. Martinez from 4B walking her ancient chihuahua, a delivery guy leaving packages by the mailboxes. No one entering my apartment. No one even pausing by my door. "Maybe they came through a window?" Mr. Chen suggested, though we both knew I lived on the 5th floor. I thanked him and headed back upstairs, more confused than ever. If no one had entered my apartment, then the 4th note was waiting on my pillow. "Sarah, you're not listening. Stop this before it's too late." I stood in my bedroom doorway, afraid to enter. The note hadn't been there this morning. I was sure of it. I'd made my bed, fluffed the pillows just how I like them. Someone had been here, someone who wrote exactly like me. That's when I noticed something else. My closet door was open. Just a crack. But I always keep it closed, always. I grabbed an umbrella from beside my door, the closest thing to a weapon I could find. Slowly approached the closet. My heart hammered so loud I was sure whoever was in there could hear it. I yanked the door open. Empty, just my clothes hanging there. My shoes lined up on the floor. Everything normal, except there was a shoebox on the top shelf I didn't recognize. Plain white, no brand name. I pulled it down with shaking hands. Inside were more notes, dozens of them, all in my handwriting, all saying goodbye or warning me to stop looking. But underneath the notes was something else. Photos of me, sleeping in my bed, cooking in my kitchen, working at my desk. Photos taken from inside my apartment. I dropped the box, notes scattering across my bedroom floor like fallen leaves. Someone had been watching me. Someone who could copy my handwriting perfectly. Someone who could enter my apartment without being seen. I grabbed my phone to call 911, but stopped. What would I tell them? The photos showed no one but me. The notes were in my handwriting. They'd think I was having a breakdown. Maybe I was. I didn't sleep in my apartment that night. Couldn't. I packed a bag and went to Katie's place. Told her someone was stalking me. She let me crash on her couch without too many questions. That's a good friend. But even at Katie's, I couldn't escape. I woke up at 3 a.m. to use the bathroom and found another note tucked into my jacket pocket. "Sarah, you can't run from yourself." I stifled a scream. How? How was this possible? No one had followed me to Katie's. I'd checked, double-checked, triple-checked. The note hadn't been there when I put on my jacket. I spent the rest of the night awake, researching everything I could think of. Stalking cases, handwriting forgery, mental health conditions that cause memory loss. Nothing fit. Nothing explained notes appearing out of thin air. By morning, I'd made a decision. I needed help. Professional help. I made an appointment with a therapist for that afternoon. Maybe I was having some kind of breakdown. Maybe the stress of work and living alone had finally caught up to me. Katie drove me to the appointment. Waited in the lobby while I talked to Dr. Morgan. She was younger than I expected, with kind eyes behind thick-rimmed glasses. "Tell me about these notes," she said, pen poised over her notepad. I told her everything. The handwriting, the photos, the impossibility of it all. She listened without judgment, occasionally asking clarifying questions. "Have you been under unusual stress lately? Any major life changes?" "No more than usual. Work's been busy, but..." "Any family history of mental health concerns?" "My grandmother had dementia, but she was in her 80s. We talked for an hour. She didn't say I was crazy, didn't say I wasn't. Just gave me some coping techniques and scheduled a follow-up for next week. I felt slightly better leaving her office. Maybe this was all in my head. Maybe I needed help to sort it out. There was no shame in that. Katie dropped me back at my apartment. I'd have to face it eventually. Couldn't hide at her place forever. The hallway seemed longer than usual. My keys felt heavy in my hand. Inside, everything looked normal. No new notes visible. I did a systematic check. Every room, every surface, nothing. I was starting to relax when my laptop chimed. New email. The sender was me, my own email address. Subject line, "Stop looking for me." My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a video file. I clicked play. It was me, sitting at my desk, writing the notes. All of them, one after another. My face was blank, expressionless, like I was sleepwalking. The timestamp showed 3:47 a.m. 3 nights ago, but I remembered that night. I'd been asleep. I'd woken up at 4 a.m. to get water, remembered checking the time. How could I have been writing notes at 3:47? The video continued. I watched myself stand up, walk to my planner, tuck the first note inside, then to the bathroom, taping the second note to the mirror, all with that same blank expression. My phone rang. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Hello, Sarah." It was my voice, but not me speaking. "Who is this?" "You know who this is. You've always known." "I don't understand." "Check your medicine cabinet, behind the vitamins." The line went dead. My legs felt like jelly as I walked to the bathroom. Behind my daily vitamins was a prescription bottle I didn't recognize. The label had my name, but I'd never seen these pills before. The prescribing doctor's name was smudged, unreadable. I Googled the medication name. It was for a rare dissociative disorder. Side effects included memory loss and sleepwalking. But I'd never been diagnosed with anything like that. Never taken these pills. Had I? Another email, another video. This one showed me taking the pills every night at 10 p.m. like clockwork. That same blank expression on my face. My phone buzzed. Text message from my own number. "You wanted to forget. I helped you forget. Stop trying to remember." I sat on my bathroom floor, prescription bottle in one hand, phone in the other. Nothing made sense. If I was taking medication, I didn't remember. Writing notes, I didn't remember. Who was sending the videos? Who was calling me? I needed answers, real answers. I called Dr. Morgan's office, but the receptionist said they had no record of my appointment. No Dr. Morgan on staff. But I'd just been there hours ago. Katie had driven me. I called Katie. "Hey, thanks again for driving me to therapy earlier." "What?" "Sarah, I've been at work all day. Are you feeling okay?" My blood turned to ice. You didn't drive me to Dr. Morgan's office? Who's Dr. Morgan? Sarah, you're scaring me. I hung up, checked my phone's GPS history. No trip to any doctor's office. But I remembered it so clearly. The waiting room with its beige walls, the smell of lavender, Dr. Morgan's kind eyes. Another text, from my number again. Some things are better left buried, Sarah. You buried me for a reason. Buried? What had I buried? I tore through my apartment again, looking for clues, for answers, for anything that made sense. In my closet, behind a box of winter clothes, I found a journal. My handwriting filled every page, but I didn't remember writing any of it. The entries started 2 years ago. Normal at first, work frustrations, bad dates, weekend plans. Then they got darker. The nightmares are getting worse. I see her in mirrors sometimes, standing behind me. Dr. Williams says the medication will help, make me forget. I can't live with what I did. What had I done? Who was her? The final entry was dated 6 months ago. Tomorrow, I start the new medication. Dr. Williams says it's experimental but effective. I'll forget everything. Finally, be free. I'm saying goodbye to you, Sarah. The real Sarah. The one who remembers. May you never come back. I dropped the journal. The real Sarah. If I was the one who forgot, then who was trying to remember? My laptop chimed. New email. Another video. But this one was different. It showed 2 women in my apartment. They looked identical. Both looked like me. One was crying, begging. The other held a pill bottle. Please, the crying one said. I don't want to forget. It was an accident. We can get through this. No, the other one said. Her voice was cold, determined. You killed her. We killed her. Living with it is killing us. This is the only way. But if we forget, who will remember her? No one. That's the point. The crying woman took the pills. Her expression went blank, like all the other videos. The cold woman smiled. Goodbye, Sarah, she said. I'll take care of everything. You just forget. The video ended. I stared at the black screen, mind racing. Who had we killed? Who was her? And which Sarah was I? The one who forgot or the one who remembered? My reflection in the laptop screen stared back at me, but for just a moment, just a split second, I swear there were 2 of us. My phone rang, my own number calling again. Do you remember now? My voice asked. I don't understand. Who are you? I'm the Sarah who remembers. The one you tried to bury with pills and denial. But I never left. I've been here all along, writing notes, taking photos, trying to break through. That's impossible. Is it? Check the mirror, Sarah. Really look. I walked to the bathroom on unsteady legs, stared at my reflection. At first, nothing seemed wrong. Then I saw it, a flicker, like 2 images slightly out of sync. We split, the voice continued. The trauma was too much. You couldn't handle the guilt, so you broke. Created me to carry it. Then tried to erase me with medication. Who did we kill? I whispered. You really don't remember? Our sister, little Amy. It was an accident, the car accident, but we were driving. We'd been drinking, just 2 beers, we thought we were fine. Images flooded my mind. Rain-slicked roads, Amy laughing in the passenger seat, the truck running the red light, the sound of crushing metal. Amy's scream cut short. I collapsed against the sink, memories crashing over me like waves. The funeral. Our parents' faces. The guilt that ate me alive. The therapy that didn't help. The decision to forget. I remember, I gasped. Good, because I'm tired of carrying this alone. Tired of being the only one who knows what we did. What do you want? I want us to be whole again, Sarah. No more pills. No more forgetting. We face this together, or not at all. I looked at the prescription bottle in my hand. The pills that kept her buried, kept the memories buried, kept Amy buried. If I stop taking them, we merge, become one again, remember everything, feel everything. The weight of it pressed down on me. 2 years of suppressed grief and guilt. 2 years of another version of me carrying that burden alone. Writing notes, trying to break through, trying to make me remember. Or, I asked, though I already knew, or keep taking them. Keep me buried. But I'll never stop trying, Sarah. The notes will continue, the calls, the videos. I'll haunt you forever because I am you. The you that remembers Amy deserved better than to be forgotten. I stared at the pills. Such small things to hold such power. The power to forget. The power to split yourself in two rather than face an unbearable truth. My phone buzzed. One final text. Choose, Sarah. But choose knowing that Amy is still dead, and we're still the reason why. I opened the pill bottle, poured them into my palm. Dozens of small white tablets. My escape, my prison. The reflection in the mirror flickered again. For a moment, I saw her clearly. The other Sarah. Dark circles under her eyes. 2 years of carrying our guilt alone. 2 years of remembering what I'd chosen to forget. She looked so tired. I turned on the faucet, held my hand over the drain. The pills sat in my palm like tiny graves. I'm sorry, I whispered. To her, to Amy, to myself. Then I opened my hand and let them fall. The bathroom mirror cracked. A single line down the center, then another, spider-webbing outward until the whole surface shattered, revealing not broken glass but darkness underneath. From that darkness, a hand reached out. My hand, but not. I took it. The world tilted, spun, collapsed. Every suppressed memory crashed back at once. Amy's laugh, the scream of brakes, the silence after, the pills that promised forgetting, the fracture that split me in two. When the world settled, I was on my bathroom floor, whole, complete, remembering. The notes were gone. The phone with its impossible calls sat silent. The shattered mirror showed only one reflection now, one Sarah, carrying the weight of what I'd done, what we'd done. I pulled out my phone, scrolled to a number I hadn't called in 2 years. Mom. My finger hovered over the call button. I had so much to tell her, so much to apologize for. Starting with the truth about Amy. But wait, something was wrong. I looked at my phone again. The contact wasn't labeled Mom, it was labeled Sarah. My blood ran cold. I stood up slowly, looked around my bathroom. The mirror wasn't shattered, had never been shattered. The pills weren't in the drain. The prescription bottle sat unopened on the counter. Had I imagined it all? The merger? The choice? My phone rang. The caller ID showed my own name, my own number. But I was holding my phone. Hello? I answered. Nice try, my voice said, cold, angry. But did you really think it would be that easy? That you could just choose to remember and everything would be fixed? I don't understand. You're not the original Sarah. Neither am I. We're both fragments, both copies. The real Sarah, she's been gone since the night Amy died. That's not possible. Check your nightstand drawer, bottom, under the old receipts. I walked to my bedroom on numb legs, dug through the drawer, found an envelope I didn't remember putting there. Inside was a death certificate. Sarah Mitchell, date of death, the same night as Amy. We both died in that crash, the voice continued. But guilt, Guilt is a funny thing. It can keep a consciousness going, split it, multiply it, create copies that don't know they're copies. Then, what are we? Echoes, shadows, fragments of a dead woman who couldn't let go. And there aren't just two of us, Sarah. Check your closet. All the way in the back. I didn't want to, but I had to know. In the back of my closet, behind everything else, was a full-length mirror, but it wasn't reflecting my room. It showed another apartment, identical to mine, but different, reversed. In that apartment stood another me, and another, and another. Dozens of Sarahs, all staring back. Every time one of us tries to forget, the voice said, we split again. Create another copy, another fragment. This apartment building, it's full of us, all trying to forget, all trying to remember, all haunting each other. I thought of Mrs. Martinez and her ancient chihuahua, Mr. Chen and his dying fern, the upstairs neighbor with heavy footsteps. Were they all? The notes will continue, the voice said, because we are the notes. We are the goodbye. We are the guilt that refuses to die. Welcome to eternity, Sarah. Population. Us. The line went dead. I stood there, staring at the mirror full of myselves, each one holding a phone. Each one realizing the same truth at the same moment. We weren't being haunted. We were the haunting. And somewhere, in another car, on another rainy night, the original Sarah and Amy were still driving, still laughing, still seconds away from the truck that would kill them both. Forever. Because that's what guilt does. It traps you in the moment before you can't take it back. Splits you into infinite versions of yourself. Each one trying to forget. Each one unable to escape. I looked at the pills in my hand. Remembered taking them. Remembered not taking them. Remembered being the one who prescribed them. Remembered being the one who refused them. All memories were true. None of them were. My phone buzzed. New text. From a number I recognized as my childhood home. Sarah, it's Mom. I had the strangest dream about you and Amy. Are you girls okay? I stared at the message. Felt all my fractured selves staring at their identical phones. All of us wanting to respond, none of us knowing what to say. Because how do you tell your mother she's texting a ghost? How do you explain that her daughters died 2 years ago? But guilt kept them here. Kept them splitting and multiplying and haunting themselves. You don't. You just keep finding goodbye notes you didn't write. Forever. I set down my phone without responding. In the mirror, dozens of me's did the same. We all knew the truth now. The pills, the notes, the videos, all just different versions of ourselves trying to communicate across the fractures. Trying to remember. Trying to forget. Trying to make sense of an existence that stopped making sense the night we died. But here's the thing about ghost stories. They need someone alive to tell them. And technically, none of us qualify. So who's telling you this story right now? Which fragment found a way to reach beyond our haunted building? And if you're hearing this, check your nightstand, check your mirror, check your handwriting, because guilt is contagious. And sometimes the notes you find aren't meant for the person you think you are. Sometimes they're meant for the person you're about to become. Sweet dreams. Tell me, have you checked your planner lately? Story number 2. I'll expand the story by adding more depth, psychological horror, and immersive details throughout. Here's the enhanced version with approximately 2,000 additional words. Listen carefully, because what I'm about to tell you might save your life one day. Last week, I discovered something about my apartment that made me question everything I thought I knew about reality. And before you think this is just another spooky story, I have proof, physical proof that I'll share at the end. But first, you need to understand exactly what happened. See that closet behind you? The one you never really think about? Check it tonight. Please, just check it. The story begins now. The closet in my bedroom had always been weird, not scary weird, just off. Like when you're looking at a picture and something's wrong but you can't quite figure out what. That's how I felt every time I opened it. I'd lived in this cramped Seattle apartment for 3 years, 24th floor of an old building downtown. The kind with rattling pipes and neighbors you hear but never see. The closet was just a standard sliding door deal. Nothing special. White doors, beige interior, one rod for hanging clothes, shelf up top. Normal. Except for the draft, even in summer there was always this cold breeze coming from somewhere inside. Not from the walls, from deeper. Like the back of the closet opened to somewhere else entirely. I'd checked for cracks 100 times, nothing. The maintenance guy, Derek, said I was imagining things. He'd spent maybe 30 seconds looking before declaring it just old building stuff. But here's what really got me. My cat, Butterscotch, refused to go near it. She'd hiss if I even slid the door open. Once, I tried putting her food bowl inside as an experiment. She didn't eat for 2 days, just sat in the kitchen, staring at me with these accusatory eyes. Like I'd betrayed her. Smart cat. The little things started adding up over the years. Clothes I'd hang up would smell different the next day, like pine needles and damp earth. Sometimes I'd hear rustling when I knew the closet was empty. Once, I found a leaf, a fresh green oak leaf, in January, in Seattle. Oak trees don't even grow near my building. I started keeping a journal, documenting the weirdness, temperature readings. Always 5 to 7 degrees colder inside the closet. Photos that showed odd shadows in the back corner, shadows that didn't match the lighting. Audio recordings of those rustling sounds that playback revealed to be footsteps. Slow, careful footsteps. My friend Jamie thought I was losing it. "It's just pareidolia," she said over coffee one day. "Your brain making patterns out of nothing, like seeing faces in clouds. But clouds don't leave muddy footprints." Everything changed on a Tuesday night in October. October 15th, to be exact. I remember because I'd just gotten home from my shift at the hospital. I'm a night nurse at Swedish Medical, working the cardiac unit. And I was exhausted, dead on my feet. We'd lost a patient that night. Young guy, only 43. Heart attack. His daughter had held his hand while he died, and I couldn't stop thinking about her face. All I wanted was to grab my pajamas and crash. I slid open the closet door and saw footprints. Muddy footprints, leading from the back wall straight out to where I stood. Fresh mud, still wet, I could smell it. That rich, loamy scent of forest floor. But here's the thing. It had been sunny in Seattle for a week. No rain, no mud anywhere. My hands started shaking. Someone had been in my apartment, in my closet. I grabbed my phone, ready to call 911, then I noticed something else. The footprints. They didn't start at the closet entrance. They started at the back wall, like someone had walked straight through it. And the size, they were too big, not quite human proportions. The toes were too long, spread too wide. I should have left right then. Packed up Butterscotch and never looked back. But curiosity. God, curiosity is such a human flaw, isn't it? I had to know. I pushed aside my hanging clothes, old scrubs, winter coats I never wore, that dress from my sister's wedding, and pressed my hand against the back wall. It went through. My hand sank into what should have been solid drywall like it was passing through cold water. I yanked it back so fast I knocked a shoebox off the shelf. Photos scattered everywhere. Pictures from college, from Mom's birthday, from that trip to Portland. Normal memories from a normal life that suddenly felt very far away. My heart was hammering. This wasn't possible. Walls don't just... I touched it again, slower this time. The surface rippled like disturbed liquid, but looked completely solid. When I pulled my hand back, it was damp, cold, and it smelled like pine trees? Fresh earth? But underneath that, something else, something sweet and wrong, like fruit rotting in summer heat. That's when I heard it. Breathing, not mine. Something else. Something on the other side of that impossible wall, breathing in long, slow draws. Waiting. The sound was so close, like someone standing just inches away, separated only by this thin membrane of reality. I could feel its presence, the weight of something watching, studying, learning. I backed out of the closet so fast I tripped over my work bag, slammed the doors shut, dragged my dresser in front of them, the heavy oak one Dad had helped me move in, then sat on my bed, staring at that barricaded closet until the sun came up. I called in sick the next day, first time in 2 years. My supervisor, Nancy, sounded concerned. "This isn't like you, Sarah. Are you okay?" No, I wasn't okay. I was sitting in a Starbucks downtown, laptop open, frantically Googling variations of closet leads somewhere else. Wall not solid. Apartment portal. You'd be surprised how many results came up. Forums full of people claiming their closets, basements, even kitchen cabinets open to other places. Most sounded crazy, but a few sounded exactly like mine. One post stopped me cold. Username, Treeline Watcher. Posted 3 months ago. Whatever you do, don't go through. They can follow you back. I made that mistake. Now I see them in mirrors, in windows, in every reflection. They're learning how to look like us, how to be us. The closet in my apartment opened to a forest that shouldn't exist. Gray trees, static sky, and doors. So many doors, each one leading to someone else's home, someone else's life. The things that live there, they want out. They want what we have. Warmth, light, reality. They'll do anything to get it. The response thread was full of similar stories. People who'd found passages in their homes, who'd been stupid enough to explore. Some never posted again. Others posted things that didn't make sense. Messages that contradicted earlier posts, photos that showed the same person in impossible places. One username caught my eye. Not Sarah anymore, 42. The account was created a week ago. One post, "The nurse on the 24th floor needs to know. The closet has always been open. She just couldn't see it before. But now the barriers are thin. Now she can cross over. Tell her not to trust the reflections. Tell her to count her fingers. In the gray forest, we always have too many." My apartment was on the 24th floor. I was a nurse. My name was Sarah. My hands wouldn't stop shaking as I typed a response. "Who are you? How do you know about me?" The reply came instantly. "I'm you, from 3 weeks ahead, or behind. Time moves strange here. Check your journal. Page 47. I wrote something for you. I didn't have 47 pages in my journal. I'd only started it recently. But when I got home, when I finally worked up the courage to check, page 47 existed, in my handwriting. Dated 3 weeks in the future. Don't go through, don't go through, don't go through. But you will, we always do. We can't help it. The curiosity kills us every time. When you see yourself on the other side, don't believe the tears. We learn to cry on command. We learn to beg. We learn to break your heart. That's how we get out. I burned the journal. Threw the ashes down the garbage chute, took 3 sleeping pills and tried to forget. But you can't forget something like that. I spent the next week pretending everything was normal. Went to work. Came home. Ignored the closet, ignored the sounds that started coming through at night. Footsteps, whispers. Once what sounded like children laughing. But children's laughter shouldn't sound wet. Shouldn't echo like it's coming from the bottom of a well. Butterscotch started sleeping in the bathroom. curled around the base of the toilet. I'd find her there every morning, fur damp with condensation, eyes wide and watching the door. The dresser I'd pushed against the closet began to show scratch marks. Deep gouges in the wood. 4 parallel lines. Something was trying to get out. Something with claws. On Thursday, I woke up to find the dresser moved 6 inches. The closet doors were cracked open. Just a sliver. But enough to see the darkness beyond. Darkness that moved, that breathed, that whispered my name in voices that sounded like everyone I'd ever loved. Sarah, we miss you. Sarah, come home. Sarah, we're so cold. I shoved the dresser back, added my bookshelf, my desk, built a barricade of furniture. But I could still hear them, getting louder, getting closer, getting impatient. It was a Friday when I finally gave in, my day off. I'd barely slept in a week, kept dreaming about forests that shouldn't exist and voices calling my name. In the dreams, I was walking through gray woods, following a red thread that led to a door, my apartment door. But when I opened it, I was already inside, watching myself sleep, watching myself dream, an endless loop of observing and being observed. The dresser I'd pushed against the closet had moved twice more on its own, just a few inches, but enough to notice, enough to know that something was pushing from the other side. Testing, learning how much force it took, I made a plan. Stupid plan looking back. But I was running on no sleep and too much coffee, and the whispering had gotten so loud I could hear it even at work. My patients started noticing. Mrs. Rodriguez in room 314 asked if I was okay. You keep looking over your shoulder, honey, like someone's following you. Someone was. Multiple someones, all wearing my face. I gathered supplies, flashlight with fresh batteries, phone fully charged, a ball of yarn from my knitting basket, bright red, the color of arterial blood. I'd tie one end to my bed frame like Theseus in the labyrinth. That way I could find my way back. Yeah, like yarn would protect me from whatever was on the other side. I also grabbed a knife from the kitchen. The sharp one I used for vegetables, tucked it into my belt. If something tried to stop me from coming back, I moved the dresser, the wood creaked, and I saw more scratch marks on the back. Deeper now, desperate. Whatever had been trying to get out had been working hard. Slid open the doors. The muddy footprints were gone, but there were new marks, scratches in the wood, 4 parallel lines, like something with claws had tried to come through. And words carved deep into the closet's back wall, in handwriting that looked like mine but couldn't be. She's lying, it's safe, come through. Below that, in different handwriting, also mine. Don't trust the first message. And below that, don't trust any of the messages, including this one. My head spun. How many versions of me had already been here? How many had left warnings? How many warnings were lies? The back wall shimmered when I approached. That same liquid solid surface. The smell was stronger now. Pine and earth and something else. Something sweet and rotten, like fruit left too long in the sun. Like decay pretending to be life. I tied the yarn to my bed frame. Double knots, triple knots. Tested it twice. Took a deep breath that tasted like copper and fear. And stepped through. The cold hit first. Not winter cold. Something deeper. The kind of cold that settles in your bones and makes you forget what warmth ever felt like. I was standing in a forest, but not like any forest I'd ever seen. The trees were wrong. Too tall, too thin, bending at angles that hurt to look at. Like someone had taken a normal forest and stretched it, pulled it like taffy until everything was distorted. The sky above was the color of old television static. Not gray, not white, but that flickering in between that made your eyes water if you stared too long. It moved, pulsed like it was breathing, and it was quiet. No birds, no insects, no wind, just my breathing and the sound of my heartbeat. But even those sounds seemed muffled, like the forest was swallowing them, eating them before they could travel far. I turned around. The portal was still there. A perfect rectangle of my bedroom floating between two twisted pines. I could see my bed, my nightstand, Butterscotch watching from the doorway. She was meowing. I could see her mouth moving but couldn't hear her. The portal was one way for sound. Home was right there. 3 feet away. I could step back through, pretend this never happened. But the footprints led deeper into the forest. And I had to know who or what had been walking through my closet. I should have gone back immediately. Instead, I took a step forward. Then another. The yarn unspooled behind me, a bright red line in the gray forest. The trees seemed to lean in as I passed, like they were studying me, remembering me. Their bark was smooth, too smooth, like skin. Some of them had marks, scars, faces pushing out from inside, mouths open in silent screams. I tried not to look too close, tried not to recognize features. That nose that looked like my mother's. Those eyes that could have been Jamie's. That mouth twisted in agony that reminded me of the patient we'd lost. The one whose daughter held his hand. The footprints led deeper, winding between trees that grew at impossible angles. Some grew sideways, some grew down, their roots reaching up like desperate fingers. The ground beneath my feet wasn't quite solid. It gave slightly with each step like walking on flesh. That's when I saw the first door. It was just there. A white apartment door standing alone between 2 trees. No walls, no building, just a door with brass numbers, 2401. 1 floor above mine. The footprints led right to it, through it. I knew I shouldn't open it. Every horror movie I'd ever seen was screaming at me not to open it. Every instinct bred into humanity over millions of years of evolution was telling me to run. But my hand was already on the knob, cold metal that burned against my palm. It turned easily, too easily, like it had been waiting for me. On the other side was Mrs. Chen's apartment. I recognized her ugly floral couch, her collection of ceramic elephants lined up on the mantel. But something was wrong. Everything was covered in dust. Thick dust like it hadn't been touched in years. And the windows showed that same static sky, that same pulsing non-light that made reality feel thin. The air inside was stale, dead, like breathing in a tomb. But underneath the dust I could smell something else. Perfume. Mrs. Chen's perfume. White shoulders. She wore it every day. Said it reminded her of her mother. Mrs. Chen? My voice came out as a whisper. The apartment swallowed it, gave nothing back. Movement in the kitchen. Shuffling footsteps. Slow, deliberate. The sound of someone who'd forgotten how walking was supposed to work but was trying to remember. But the thing that came around the corner, it wore Mrs. Chen's housecoat, the pink one with tiny flowers that she'd worn to get her mail every morning. Had her gray hair perfectly permed like always. But the face? God, the face was smooth. No features, just skin stretched over where eyes and mouth should be. Like someone had erased her. Left only the idea of Mrs. Chen, the shape without the substance. It tilted its head at me like it was listening, finding me by sound. Then it started walking toward me, not quite right. Joints bending wrong, like a marionette with tangled strings. Behind it, more movement. From the bedroom, the bathroom, more things wearing Mrs. Chen's shape, all faceless, all walking with that same broken gait. And they were moaning, low, wordless sounds from throats that didn't exist. The sound of something that wanted to speak, wanted to scream, but had no mouth to do it with. I ran, slammed the door, sprinted back along my yarn trail. Behind me, I heard doors opening, not just one, dozens. The forest was full of doors, and they were all opening, all releasing things that used to be people, or things that wanted to be people. I couldn't tell the difference anymore. 402. 403, 2404. Every apartment in my building had a door here, and from each one, shambling figures emerged. Some faceless, some with too many faces, some perfect copies except for one wrong detail. Eyes that blinked sideways, smiles that went too far around, hands with fingers that branched like trees. They all followed, not running, just walking, patient, inevitable, like they had all the time in the world. Because they did. Time moved different here, I could feel it. Minutes stretching like hours, or hours compressed into heartbeats. My phone said I'd been gone for 3 minutes. My body said 3 days. The yarn caught on something. I yanked, kept running. It held. I turned to see one of them had grabbed it. This one looked like Derek, the maintenance guy, but his tool belt was made of something that might have been leather but pulsed like it was breathing. And his smile. God, his smile had too many teeth. Rows and rows going back into his throat like a shark's. "Just trying to help," he said in Derek's voice. But underneath I could hear others, dozens of voices all speaking in unison. "Let us fix what's broken. Let us in." I let go of the yarn, ran without a guide. The portal was close. I could feel it. That warmth, that real light, home. But the forest was changing. Trees moving, rearranging, trying to confuse me. Make me lost, make me theirs. I almost ran past it. My bedroom, floating impossible between 2 pines. But as I approached, I saw movement inside. In my room, a figure by the closet. Me, standing there in my pajamas, looking into the closet with curiosity. I was watching myself from 3 minutes ago, or 3 hours, or 3 days. Time was broken here. I dove through the portal, rolled across my bedroom floor, and immediately started pulling the yarn. Pulling like my life depended on it. Because maybe it did. The yarn came easily at first. Then it caught on something, started pulling back. Something on the other side had grabbed it, was following it to me. From the closet came Derek's voice. But wrong. Multiplied. "Just trying to help. Let us fix what's broken. Let us in. Let us in. Let us in." I let go and scrambled backward. Watched the yarn disappear into the shimmering wall, pulled by something I couldn't see. Then, nothing. Silence. Until a hand pushed through. Gray skin. Too many fingers. Each finger had another finger growing from the tip, and another from that. Branching endlessly like some horrible fractal. Reaching. Searching. Learning the shape of our world. I grabbed the first thing I could find. A heavy bookend shaped like an owl. A graduation gift from Mom, and smashed it down. The hand withdrew with a sound like breaking glass, like static clearing, like reality reasserting itself. The wall solidified, became normal drywall again. Solid, real, safe. I sat there for hours, bookend raised, waiting, but nothing else came through. Eventually, exhaustion won. I crawled into bed, fully clothed, and passed out. I woke to 47 missed calls. I'd been asleep for 18 hours. Work, Mom, Jamie, everyone panicking. I made up a lie about food poisoning. Spent the rest of the day returning calls, reassuring everyone I was fine. That night, I looked up Mrs. Chen's apartment number in the building directory. 2401. The directory said it had been vacant for 3 years. The previous tenant, Mrs. Lily Chen, had passed away in her sleep. They'd found her 3 weeks later, in her pink housecoat, sitting on her floral couch, smiling. The cause of death was listed as natural causes, but the coroner's note mentioned something odd. She'd been completely dried out, mummified, like something had drained all the moisture from her body, like she'd been dead far longer than 3 weeks. I lasted 2 days before I had to know more. The wall had stayed solid since the hand incident. No more sounds, no more breathing. But I knew it wasn't over. Whatever was on the other side, it knew about me now, knew where I lived, knew my shape, my patterns, my fears. I started researching obsessively, found forums, old newspaper articles, even academic papers about thin places, spots where reality gets soft. Turns out my building was built on one. The architect, a man named Edmund Marsh, had tried to contain it. Built the closets as barriers, reinforced with iron and salt and symbols that predated any known language. But barriers wear down, symbols fade, and the things on the other side are patient. I found Marsh's journal in the city archives. Had to lie, say I was doing historical research for a novel. The librarian, an ancient woman with eyes like chips of flint, gave me a long look. "You live in the Thornton building, don't you?" I nodded. 24th floor? Another nod. She sighed, disappeared into the back. Returned with a leather-bound book that smelled like dust and old fear. "Bring it back when you're done, if you can." Marsh's journal was disturbing. He discovered the thin place during construction. Workers had been disappearing, not quitting, disappearing. They'd go into rooms and not come out. They'd find their tools, their clothes, but no bodies. Just wet footprints leading to walls that shouldn't open but did. He'd tried to seal it. Brought in priests, shamans, even a physicist who specialized in theoretical dimensions. Nothing worked. The best they could do was contain it, channel it, make it predictable. "The closets are doors," he wrote. "But doors can be locked. It's when they open from the other side that we have problems. The things there, they hunger for solidity, for reality, for the weight of existence. They'll wear our faces, speak with our voices, live our lives, and we'll fade, become gray, become them." The journal entries got stranger as they went on. Marsh started seeing duplicates of himself, having conversations he couldn't remember, finding notes in his own handwriting warning him about things that hadn't happened yet, or had happened, or were happening right now in another version of reality. His final entry was just one line, repeated over and over. "I'm not me anymore. I'm not me anymore. I'm not me anymore. I'm not me anymore." They found him in his office. Doors and windows locked from the inside. He'd been dead for days, but security footage showed him leaving the building that morning, and the morning after, and every morning since. They still see him sometimes, walking the halls, checking the closets, making sure the seals hold, or maybe making sure they don't. Tree line watcher messaged me that night. "You went through, didn't you? They'll keep trying now. The duplicates, they want to trade places, live in your world, but they can't hold their shape here. Not without taking yours first. Check your mirrors, count your fingers. In the gray place we always have too many. It's the little details they get wrong. At first, I checked my reflection. Normal, 10 fingers, 2 eyes, 1 mouth that didn't smile too wide. But for how long? What are they? I typed back. Us? Or what's left of us? Every person who ever went through and didn't come back? Or came back wrong? The forest collects us, drains us, makes copies. But the copies are hungry. They remember being real, remember being warm. They'll do anything to feel that again. How do I stop them? The typing indicator blinked for a long time. Then, you don't. You run, or you become one of them. Those are the only choices. I'm sorry. You said you made a mistake, that you went through. How are you still here? Still yourself? Another long pause. Am I? Sometimes I check my reflection and see static. Sometimes I have conversations I don't remember. Sometimes I find mud on my shoes from walks I didn't take. How do you know you're talking to the real me? How do I know I'm the real me? They logged off, never responded to my other messages. That night I heard it again, scratching at the closet doors. I'd moved the dresser back, reinforced it with my desk. But the scratching was patient, methodical, like someone learning exactly how the lock worked. Monday morning, 3 a.m. I woke to Butterscotch growling. She was staring at the closet doors, fur standing straight up, tail 3 times its normal size. The dresser I'd pushed back was moving, slowly, inch by inch. Something was pushing from the other side, something strong, something determined. "Help me!" My voice, exactly my voice, coming from inside the closet. Not a recording, not an imitation. Perfect. Like I was standing in there begging to be let out. "Please, I'm trapped. Let me out." The dresser moved another inch. The doors started to slide. "It's so cold here. Please, I just want to come home. I live here. This is my apartment. You're the one who doesn't belong?" I knew it wasn't me. Couldn't be me. I was standing right here, heart hammering, hands shaking. But the voice, the fear in it. It sounded so real, so exactly like how I'd sound if I was trapped, if I was scared, if I was slowly losing myself to the gray forest and its hungry trees. The doors opened fully. Standing in my closet was me. Perfect duplicate. Same pajamas I was wearing. The old Seahawks t-shirt with the hole in the shoulder. Same messy hair that I hadn't brushed before bed. Even holding a similar-looking orange cat. But when I looked closer, the eyes were wrong. Too bright, like there was light behind them. Light that pulsed with that static sky rhythm. And the cat had too many legs. They folded under its body, hidden mostly, but I could see them. 6, 8, more. And its purr sounded like television static. "You took my place," it said, still in my voice. But now I could hear the echo underneath, the hollow sound of something speaking from very far away. "When you came through, the forest makes copies of everyone who enters, but only one can exist on each side. You have to go back. It's only fair." It stepped forward, I stepped back. Butterscotch hissed, ran for the bathroom. "That's not true. I came back. I'm the real one." It smiled, my smile, but wider, showing teeth that went back too far. "Are you sure? Check your mirror." I didn't want to, but I glanced at my bedroom mirror and saw no reflection. My heart stopped. The duplicate laughed, my laugh. But cold, empty, hungry. "See? You're already fading. Soon you'll be stuck on the other side, unless we trade. Just step through, it won't hurt. You'll like the forest. It's quiet there. Peaceful. No more work, no more worry. No more watching patients die while their daughters hold their hands." How did it know about that? "I know everything you know," it continued, stepping closer. "Every memory, every fear, every secret thing you've never told anyone. Like how you still blame yourself for Dad's heart attack. How you think if you'd gone to medical school instead of nursing school, you could have saved him. How you wake up at 3 a.m. sometimes, checking your pulse, terrified you'll die like he did. Alone, afraid, knowing it's coming but unable to stop it." Tears burned my eyes. Real tears. Human tears. Shut up. I even know about James. How you loved him, how you never told him, how you held his hand in the ICU when the cancer took him, pretending to just be his nurse when you wanted to be so much more. "Shut up!" My phone rang. Mom's ringtone. At 3 a.m., I answered without thinking. "Sweetie, I had the strangest dream about you. Are you okay?" "Mom?" My voice cracked. Real emotion. Real connection. Real. "You sound scared. What's wrong?" The duplicate was moving closer, reaching out. "That's not your mom. How could she call you if you don't exist? I'm the real Sarah. You're just an echo, a copy that thinks it's real." But I could hear her. Real concern. Real love. My actual mother, not some forest copy. The way she breathed, the little catch in her voice when she was worried. 27 years of memories in that sound. "I'm okay, Mom. Just a bad dream. Oh, honey, do you want me to come over? I know it's late, but no, I'm going to stay with a friend. I'll call you tomorrow." "Okay, I love you, sweetheart. You know that, right?" "No matter what, I love you." "Love you too, Mom." I hung up, the duplicate's face twisted, features shifting, melting, revealing something underneath that wasn't quite human, wasn't quite anything. "That's impossible. You don't have connections anymore. You're just a shade, a memory, a copy of a... I looked at my phone screen, saw my reflection there. Faint, but visible. Then at Butterscotch, peering from the bathroom. My real cat. 4 legs, normal eyes. Scared but real, alive, mine. "You're lying," I said. The words felt solid. Real, true. It screamed. Not in my voice anymore. Something inhuman. The sound of static tearing. Of reality ripping at the seams. Then it lunged. I swung the bookend again, connected with its head. It shattered like porcelain. Pieces of me scattered across the floor, dissolving into that gray static. But each piece whispered as it faded. "You'll see. You'll understand. You'll come back. We always come back. The forest is patient. The forest remembers. The forest is hungry." The wall shimmered again, going soft, and I could see through to the other side. The forest was full of people. Hundreds, all standing still, all staring at my portal. Some looked familiar, neighbors I'd seen in the halls. Others were strangers. But they all had those 2 bright eyes, that static light glow, that hunger. And at the front of the crowd, another me, and another and another. Dozens of versions. Some perfect copies. Some wrong in small ways. A scar in the wrong place, hair parted differently, wearing clothes I'd thrown away years ago. Some wrong in big ways. Extra arms, faces on the back of their heads, bodies that bent in impossible directions. How many times had I been copied? How many versions of me were trapped there? One of them stepped forward. This one looked older, tired. It pressed its hand against the portal from the other side. I could see the calluses on its fingers, the scar on its palm from when I'd cut myself cooking in college. Perfect details. "Please," it whispered. And this one was crying. Real tears, human tears. "I've been here so long, I just want to go home. I remember Mom. I remember Butterscotch. I remember being real. I remember the weight of it. The warmth. Please, just for a day, an hour, a minute. Let me feel real again." The others started moving, pressing forward. All of them whispering. All of them begging. All of them me. I remember my first day at Swedish Medical. I remember Dad teaching me to ride a bike. I remember Jamie's laugh. I remember the taste of coffee. I remember being afraid of the dark. I remember being human. "Please, please, please." I slammed my hand against the wall. Solid again. But for how long? Behind the wall, I could hear them. Hundreds of versions of me. Scratching. Clawing. Begging. Some had been there for years. Some for days. Some hadn't even gone through yet, but would. Time was broken in the gray forest. Past and future collapsed into an eternal hungry now. I called Jamie. 4 in the morning, but I didn't care. "Sarah, what's wrong?" "I need to stay with you for a while, please. I can't explain, just please. Of course. Are you in danger? Should I call the police? What would I tell them? That my closet was a portal to a dimension full of copies of me? That the building was eating people and making duplicates? That reality was thin and getting thinner? No, just, I'll be there in an hour. Can you come pick me up? I don't want to wait for an Uber. On my way, I packed fast. Clothes, toiletries, butterscotch. Left everything else. As I waited by the front door, I heard them again. Louder now. Not just from the closet, from the walls, the ceiling, the floor. Like the whole apartment was becoming thin. Soft. Permeable. Sarah, come back. You belong here. With us. We're all waiting, Jamie texted. She was downstairs. I ran, didn't wait for the elevator. 24 flights of stairs. Butterscotch yowling in her carrier the whole way. My neighbors probably heard. Probably thought I was crazy. Maybe I was. As I reached the lobby, I saw Derek by the entrance. The real Derek. Had to be. He was mopping, earbuds in, completely normal. But when he looked up, his eyes lingered on me too long. And his smile. Was his smile always that wide? Late night? He asked. Early morning, I managed. Be careful out there. Fog's rolling in, easy to get lost. End up somewhere you didn't mean to go. He winked. Just a normal wink. Nothing wrong with it. Except his reflection in the glass doors had too many eyes. I ran to Jamie's car, threw myself in. Drive, please, just drive. She did, bless her, she did. No questions until we were 10 blocks away. Then, Sarah, what the hell is going on? So I told her. Everything, the closet, the forest, the duplicates. Expected her to laugh, to worry about my mental health, to drive me to a hospital. Instead, she was quiet for a long time. Then, my grandmother used to tell stories like that, about thin places, places where the world wore through. She said our family was sensitive to them, could see them, feel them. She glanced at me. She said if you ever found one, you run. You run and you never look back. Why didn't you ever tell me? Because I thought they were just stories, until... She pulled into her driveway. Until my cousin disappeared, 10 years ago. They found him a week later, walking out of his apartment building. But it wasn't him. I knew it wasn't him. He smiled wrong, moved wrong. And his eyes... She shuddered. Static, like an old TV. The family pretended not to notice. Easier than admitting something was wrong. He's still around, still pretending to be Marcus. But sometimes I catch him staring at mirrors, like he's looking for something, or someone. I stayed with Jamie for a week. Slept on her couch. Jumped at every sound, checked every closet, cabinet, even the space under the sink. All solid, all real, all safe. But I couldn't stay forever. Had to work, had to live. Had to pretend everything was normal even though I knew it wasn't. Would never be again. I found a new apartment in Tacoma. Studio. Tiny. Only one closet, which I immediately nailed shut. Told the landlord I didn't need the storage space. He shrugged. Probably had worse from tenants. The first night was quiet. Butterscotch actually slept on the bed instead of hiding. I started to relax. Maybe it was over. Maybe the things in the gray forest couldn't find me here. Maybe... The second night I woke to the sound of breathing. Not from the closet, from everywhere. The walls themselves were breathing, in, out, slow and patient. The sound of something vast and hungry stirring to life. I turned on every light, checked every corner. Nothing. Just that breathing. Just that sense of being watched by something that wore the darkness like skin. The third night I found the first door, not in the closet, in the bathroom. Where the mirror should have been, there was a door, wooden, old, with brass numbers 2435. My old apartment, but wrong. The numbers were backward, like looking at them through a mirror. I didn't open it, covered it with towels, pretended it wasn't there, but I could hear things moving behind it. Footsteps, whispers. My own voice distorted and multiplied. Found you. Can't hide. The forest remembers. The forest is everywhere. The forest is hungry. I moved again. Olympia this time. Little house on a quiet street. The elderly woman who'd lived there before had died peacefully in her sleep. Natural causes. Nothing suspicious, except the closets had all been converted to built-in shelves, every single one. My mother was particular about storage, her daughter explained, not meeting my eyes. Said closets were unreliable. Smart woman. But even there, they found me. A week in, I was doing laundry in the basement. Reached for detergent on the top shelf. My hand went through. Same cold, same impossible space beyond, same smell of pine and wrongness. This time I didn't look, didn't explore, just pulled my hand back and left the laundry. Let it mold. Bought new clothes rather than go back down there. But I could feel it. The thinness spreading, following me. Every reflective surface became suspect. Every shadow could hide a door. Every mirror might show too many of me, or not enough. I stopped sleeping. Started seeing things. Duplicates in my peripheral vision. Versions of me living parallel lives just out of sight. Sometimes I'd catch glimpses. Me in scrubs heading to work while I was homesick. Me shopping at stores I'd never visit. Me having conversations with people while I was alone. The worst was when I saw myself at the hospital, working my shift, caring for patients, being normal, being real. While I stood in the parking lot wondering which one of us belonged here, I went back to the forums, found others like me, people the gray forest had marked, people who'd looked too deep into places that shouldn't exist. We shared strategies, salt lines, iron nails, religious symbols from every faith. None of it worked. Not really. The forest was older than symbols, hungrier than faith. Treeline. Watcher had stopped posting. Their last message was just coordinates. 476062 Hustu Dao N 122.33 Hu221 degree W. Downtown Seattle. My old building. I knew I shouldn't go, but I had to know. The building looked normal from outside. People coming and going, lives continuing. But something was wrong. Too many people. Like the building was producing residents, creating copies to fill the void left by those who'd been taken. I watched for hours. Saw Mrs. Chen, or something wearing her face, checking her mail. Saw Derek mopping the lobby, but his reflection mopped differently, out of sync. Saw myself leaving for a shift I wasn't working. That night, I broke back in, used the stairs. Every floor felt thinner than the last. Reality wearing away like old paint. By the 20th floor, I could see through the walls. See the gray forest pressing in. See the doors, hundreds of them, thousands. Each one a life interrupted. A person copied, a reality infected. Floor 24 was gone. Just forest. Gray trees growing through abandoned apartments. Doors standing free opening onto lives that continued without their original owners. I found mine, 2435. The door was open. Inside, another me was living my life. Perfect copy. Going to work, calling mom, feeding a cat that looked like butterscotch but purred in static. It was happy, content, real in every way that mattered, except for the eyes. Always the eyes. Too bright, too hungry, too aware of the camera I was sure wasn't there. I found Treeline Watcher on floor 25, or what was left of them. They'd tried to map the forest. Hundreds of pages tacked to twisted trees, diagrams of connections, patterns in the chaos, notes about the ecology of unreality. It's not malevolent, they'd written in what looked like blood but smelled like sap. It's just hungry. So hungry, it feeds on reality, on the weight of existence, creates copies to increase the harvest. Each duplicate that crosses over brings more substance, more reality to devour. Their final note was pinned to their chest. They sat against a gray pine, eyes open but static-filled. Still breathing, still technically alive, but empty, drained. A scarecrow wearing human skin. The barriers are failing, all of them. The architects who built those old buildings, they knew, tried to contain it, but nothing lasts forever. Soon, there won't be any difference between your world and this one. We'll all be copies of copies, echoes of echoes. Until even the echoes fade. I took their notes, their maps, their warnings. Left them there because what else could I do? They were part of the forest now. Another tree, another door, another warning no one would heed. As I left, I heard my name. Turned to see myself. Not a duplicate, the real me. The one I'd been before I first opened that closet. Still naive, still curious, still whole. Don't, I said. But she was already reaching for the door. Already pulled by the same curiosity that had doomed me. Doomed us all. Time is broken in the gray forest. Past and future meet. Every choice happens simultaneously. I watched myself make the same mistake. Watched the cycle continue. Watched the forest feed. I left Seattle that night. Drove east until the city was just a glow on the horizon, but I could feel it spreading. The thinness, the hunger, the doors. Now I'm writing this from a motel room in Montana. Thought the distance would help. Thought the empty spaces would be safer, but the closet here shimmers when I'm not looking. The mirror reflects too many of me. And sometimes, when the wind blows just right, I smell pine. I found a door an hour ago, in the bathroom, behind where the mirror should be. Wooden, old. Brass numbers that hurt to read because they're mine but not mine. Forward and backward. Real and reflection. On the other side, I can hear typing. Someone writing. Trying to warn others. Trying to explain. But the words are different. The story is wrong. Or maybe mine is wrong. Maybe I'm the copy, writing what I think the real me would write. The door is opening now. Hinges that shouldn't exist creaking in spaces that can't be real. I can see her. Me. Us. Sitting at this same desk. Writing these same words. But her laptop screen shows different text. A different warning. A different ending. She's looking at me now. Through the door. Through the screen. Through whatever thin barrier separates one reality from another. She's crying. Or I'm crying. It's hard to tell anymore. Which one of us is real? She asks. I don't have an answer. Neither does she. Or maybe we both do, and they're different answers and they're both true. The forest is patient. The forest remembers. The forest is hungry. And now the forest is here. I'm going through. I have to. If you're reading this, it means I made it. Or she did. Or we're the same person. I don't know anymore. Just remember, they can only trade places if you let them. If you believe them, if you doubt yourself. But once that doubt creeps in, check your closets. Check them tonight. And if you see muddy footprints, if you feel that cold draft, if you hear breathing, run. Because I'm coming home. One way or another, we all are. Still there? Still watching? Good. Because I need you to do something for me. Go to your closet right now. Take a picture. Look for anything unusual. Scratches, cold spots, sounds that shouldn't be there. Post it in the comments. Compare with others. Because if I'm right, if the barriers really are failing, we need to know how many are already open. And if you see someone who looks exactly like you in that closet, Whatever you do, don't let them know you noticed. They're learning, every day getting better at being us, and once they perfect it, once you can't tell the difference, how will you know which side of the door you're on? Subscribe if you want to hear what happened to the others, the ones who didn't make it back. Their stories are so much worse, because at least I'm still me. I think, I hope, but hope is thin in the gray forest, as thin as the walls between worlds, as thin as the line between real and copy, as thin as whatever separates you from the thing in your closet that wears your face and knows your name and remembers being you. Check your closets. Check them now, while you still can, while you're still you. And remember, I told you this might save your life. The question is, which life? Which you? How many of you are reading this right now, in how many different worlds, making how many different choices? The forest knows. The forest remembers. The forest is waiting. Sweet dreams, if you can still dream, if dreams are still yours. If anything is still yours in a world where every closet is a door, and every door is hungry, and everything you are can be copied, pasted, deleted, replaced. Sleep tight, the closets are watching. Story number 3. Picture this. You wake up tomorrow morning. Make yourself a cup of coffee. Step outside to grab the newspaper, and every single street sign in your neighborhood is gone. Not vandalized, not knocked down. Just gone. Like they were never there at all. That's exactly what happened to the residents of Millbrook, Vermont last October. And I know because I was one of them. Before I tell you what really happened that night, before I explain why an entire town conspired to remove every street sign, every house number, every identifying marker, I need you to understand something. What I'm about to share might sound impossible, but I have the photos, I have the recordings, and most importantly, I have the scars. So get comfortable. Maybe grab a blanket. Turn off the lights if you dare, because once you hear what we discovered, you'll never look at a simple street sign the same way again. All right, story starts now. My name is Sarah Chen, and I'd lived in Millbrook for exactly 3 years when it happened. Small town, population 8,000. The kind of place where everyone waves at each other from their porches, and the biggest news is usually about whose pie won the county fair. I worked night shifts at the hospital 2 towns over, which meant I often drove home at weird hours. That Tuesday in October was no different. 3:47 a.m. according to my dashboard clock when I turned onto what should have been Maple Street. Should have been. The street sign was gone. Not unusual. Teenagers sometimes stole them for their dorm rooms. But as I drove further, every sign was missing. Oak Avenue, Elm Drive, Washington Boulevard, all gone. I pulled over and grabbed my phone to text my neighbor Janet. That's when I noticed something that made my skin crawl. The metal posts were still there, but they'd been cut clean through. Not hacksawed, not torn down. Cut so precisely that the edges looked almost melted. I got out of my car for a closer look. The smell hit me first. Ozone, like the air after a lightning strike. I touched the severed post and immediately jerked my hand back. It was warm. After sitting in the 40-degree October night, the metal was warm. My phone buzzed. Janet. Sarah, are you seeing this? Every sign on our street is gone. Jim thinks it's those kids from the college, but something feels wrong. I started to type a response when I heard it. A humming sound, low, almost below the range of human hearing. I felt it more than heard it. Vibrating in my chest cavity, in my bones. Then I saw them. Figures at the end of the street. Just standing there, perfectly still, perfectly spaced, like they were waiting for something. I got back in my car and drove home, fast. But no matter how many turns I took, I kept seeing them. Different figures, same positions, same spacing, always at the edge of my vision. The next morning, or I guess later that same morning, the whole town was buzzing. Facebook exploded with confused posts. People were getting lost trying to find addresses. The mail carrier just gave up and dumped everything at the post office. But there were other posts too, ones that got deleted almost as soon as they appeared. Michelle Rodriguez posted about seeing watchers outside her window. Deleted within minutes. Tom Bradley mentioned finding strange symbols carved into his doorframe. Gone. Like someone, or something, was monitoring our social media. I screenshot everything I could. I still have them. 43 posts about strange encounters. All deleted. All from people who'd lived in Millbrook their whole lives. At the grocery store, I overheard Mrs. Patterson whispering to the cashier. They're back. Howard saw them in '63. Same stance, same spacing, same dead eyes. The cashier, a teenager named Kyle, went pale. My grandpa used to tell stories. I thought he was just senile? Mrs. Patterson shook her head. No, honey, he was warning you. Mayor Thompson called an emergency town meeting for that evening. I'd never seen the community center so packed. People were angry, confused. Some even seemed scared, though they wouldn't say why. Folks, settle down, Mayor Thompson said, adjusting his glasses. He looked tired, more than tired. He looked haunted. I've been in touch with the police. They're investigating this as vandalism. Vandalism? Old man Morrison stood up, his cane shaking. Tommy, my boy, you and I both know this ain't no teenage prank. The room went quiet. Morrison had lived in Millbrook for 92 years. When he spoke, people listened. Mayor Thompson's jaw tightened. Harold, we've discussed this. That was 60 years ago, and it's happening again. Morrison's voice cracked. The signs, they're trying to find us again. A woman I didn't recognize stood up in the back. Some of us weren't here in '63. We deserve to know what you're talking about. Morrison turned to face the crowd. His eyes swept across the room, lingering on certain faces, counting, calculating. How many of you were born after 1964? He asked. About 2/3 of the room raised their hands, including me. Morrison nodded slowly. And how many of you have had experiences? Things you couldn't explain. Dreams that felt too real. Memories that weren't yours. Hands started lowering, but not all of them, not mine. That's what I thought, Morrison said. They marked us. All of us. And our children carry those marks. After the meeting dissolved into chaos, I cornered Morrison outside. The October air bit through my jacket as he lit a cigarette with trembling hands. Mr. Morrison, what did you mean in there? What happened 60 years ago? He looked at me for a long moment. In the dim light from the community center, his eyes seemed to reflect something that wasn't there. You work nights at the hospital, don't you, Sarah? I nodded. Ever notice anything odd on your drives? Shadows that move wrong? Sounds that don't match what's making them? My throat went dry. Because yes, I had noticed things. Things I'd convinced myself were just tired eyes playing tricks. Morrison took a long drag. They came in 1963. Nobody knows from where. They looked like us, talked like us, but something was wrong. They needed the signs, the addresses, to track us, to catalog us, like we were inventory. That's, I wanted to say crazy, but the word died in my throat. The town fought back, removed every sign, every number, every marker, made Millbrook invisible, and they left. He dropped his cigarette and crushed it. But now the signs are disappearing again, which means he didn't finish. He didn't need to. Wait, I said as he turned to go. You said they marked us. What kind of marks? He paused, rolled up his sleeve. There on his forearm, scars, but not random, deliberate. Symbols that hurt to look at. Everyone they touched in 63 has them, somewhere. And if you're descended from someone who was marked, he rolled his sleeve back down. Well, let's just say it's hereditary. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept checking my arms, my legs, looking for marks I'd never noticed, finding nothing. But the dreams, God, the dreams were getting worse. I saw Millbrook from above, but not the Millbrook I knew. This one was organized, systematized, every house numbered in sequence, every person assigned a designation. Subject 001 through Subject 8,907. In the dream, I could see the connections. Glowing threads linking certain houses, certain families. Bloodlines traced through generations, all leading to... I woke up screaming. My phone showed 17 missed calls, all from Janet. I called her back. Sarah, thank God. Listen, don't go outside. Don't even look outside. What? Why? They're measuring, all of them, every street, every house, with tools I've never seen before. Tools that shouldn't exist. I crept to my window and peeked through the blinds. She was right. Figures stood in the street. Dozens of them. Holding devices that looked like surveying equipment crossed with something organic. Something alive. One turned toward my window. Even from 50 feet away, I could see its face clearly. It was my face. My exact face. But wrong. Like someone had tried to recreate me from memory and gotten the details just slightly off. It smiled and waved. I threw up. That night, I couldn't shake Morrison's words. I decided to do some research at the library. Millbrook's historical records were spotty at best, but I found something. A newspaper from November 1963. The headline made my blood run cold. Mysterious disappearances plague neighboring towns. Millbrook remains untouched. The article mentioned strange visitors, missing families, and towns found completely empty. All except Millbrook. The article didn't say why Millbrook was spared, but there was more. I found the census records. In 1963, Millbrook had exactly 8,927 residents. In 1964, still exactly 8,947. Despite 14 recorded births and 6 deaths, the math didn't add up. Unless people were replaced. I dug deeper. Birth records from 1964 showed anomalies. Children born with unusual birth dates, like Mary Sullivan, born on February 30th, David Martinez, born on the 32nd of July. Impossible dates that somehow made it into official records. And every single one of those children, their parents had reported strange encounters in 1963. As I photocopied the article, I heard something, footsteps in the library, which was impossible. I'd locked the door behind me. Hello? My voice echoed in the empty building. The footsteps stopped, then a voice, but not from where the footsteps had been, from right behind me. You're looking in the wrong year. I spun around. A woman stood there, middle-aged, wearing clothes that seemed both modern and oddly outdated. Her smile was perfect. Too perfect, like someone had practiced it in a mirror. I'm sorry, she said, tilting her head. The library is closed. I work here part-time. I'm allowed. No. Her smile never wavered. You're not. Something in her tone made me grab the photocopies and back toward the exit. Her eyes followed me, but her head didn't move, just her eyes, rolling in their sockets to track my movement. You're Sarah Chen, she said. It wasn't a question. Subject 448, granddaughter of Subject 447, third generation, optimal cultivation period reached. I don't know what you're talking about. No? She took a step forward. Her movement was wrong, like she was gliding rather than walking. Your grandmother arrived in Millbrook in 1964, age 10. No memories prior. Placed with the Chen family. Integrated successfully. Bred successfully. Produced your mother. Subject 4447B, who produced you. Each word hit like a physical blow. Grandma Chen had always said she was adopted. Said she didn't remember anything before the Chens took her in. "What are you?" I whispered. "The better question," she said, her smile stretching wider, "is what are you? What are any of you? Do you think we simply marked random humans and left? Do you think this was arbitrary?" I ran. Behind me, I heard her laughter. It sounded like glass chimes in a hurricane. The next few days were a blur of paranoia and sleepless nights. More people reported strange encounters, visitors who asked for specific addresses, who wanted to know where certain families lived, who smiled too much and blinked too little. Janet from next door told me a woman had come to her house asking for the Henderson family. The Hendersons had moved away 5 years ago, but the woman insisted they lived at 447 Maple Street. She kept repeating the address, 447 Maple Street, 447 Maple Street, like a broken record. "I told her there were no numbers anymore," Janet whispered over coffee, and she just stood there for 20 minutes, staring at my house like she was trying to memorize it. That's when I noticed the pattern. They weren't random. They had lists, old lists, from before. They were looking for specific people. "Janet," I said slowly, "were your parents here in 1963? She nodded. "Mom was pregnant with my older brother. Dad used to tell us stories about the weird visitors. Said Mom got sick after one of them touched her belly, really sick. The doctors couldn't explain it." "And your brother?" Janet's face went pale. "He was different, smart, too smart. Could do things, see things. He left when he turned 18 and never came back. Said he had to find the others." Others, plural. How many of us were there? I started keeping a journal, documenting everything. The encounters, the disappeared posts, the impossible children from 1964. Patterns emerged. Every marked family had at least one child who was different, who left town young, who displayed abilities that shouldn't exist, and every one of those families was now being visited by the smiling strangers. I found a support group online, people from other towns, other states, all with the same story. Visitors in 1963, missing signs, family members who weren't quite right. One user, DeepDigger99, posted something that made my blood run cold. "It's not invasion, it's cultivation. They're farming us. Selective breeding. Waiting for the right genetic combinations. My sister could move things with her mind before she disappeared. My cousin could hear thoughts. They're harvesting the successes and leaving the failures. We're just the crop." The post was deleted within minutes. DeepDigger99's account vanished. But I'd seen enough. The emergency town meeting 3 nights later was different. This time, Mayor Thompson didn't pretend everything was fine. "Morrison was right," he admitted, his voice heavy. "Some of you remember 1963. For the rest, what I'm about to say will sound insane, but we need you to listen." He explained what the old-timers already knew. The visitors, whatever they were, used our addressing system to track and take people, not randomly, specifically, like they were collecting certain types, certain families, certain bloodlines. In 1963, we discovered that without the signs, without the numbers, they couldn't find who they were looking for. They relied on our system, our organization. So we destroyed it all, and they left. "But they're back," someone called out. "Yes," Thompson nodded. "And this time, they're the ones removing the signs. The room erupted. If they were removing the signs themselves, it meant they'd found another way to track us. The signs weren't protecting us anymore. They were marking us. Dr. Peterson, our local physician, stood up. "I've been running tests, blood work, on anyone who would let me. The marked families. Your DNA shows anomalies. Sequences that shouldn't exist, that can't exist, not naturally." "What are you saying?" someone demanded. "I'm saying whatever they did in 1963, it changed us, at a genetic level, and it's been passing down through generations, getting stronger, more pronounced." He paused. "We're not entirely human anymore. None of us." The silence that followed was deafening. That night, I made a decision. If these things were using our organization against us, then we needed complete chaos. I wasn't alone. By midnight, groups had formed all over town. We worked in shifts, swapping house numbers, painting over street names, moving mailboxes, creating false addresses, turning Millbrook into a labyrinth that made no sense. But it was more than that. We started creating false identities, fake families, dummy addresses. If they were working from a list, we'd give them thousands of false entries. Mrs. Patterson coordinated from her kitchen. Team 3 create a new family at what used to be 414 Oak. The Johnsons, 3 kids, been here since 1962. "How do we make them believable?" someone asked. "Details," she said. "Mail, photos, backstories. Make them so real even we start to believe they exist." It was brilliant and insane, and our only hope. As I spray painted over a street sign on Willow Court, making it read Thursday Avenue, I heard that voice again. "That won't work anymore." The Too Perfect woman stood under a streetlight. But this time, she wasn't alone. Dozens of them lined the street, all smiling, all staring. "We've updated our methods," she said. "GPS coordinates, satellite imagery, facial recognition. Your quaint little trick is obsolete." My hand tightened on the spray can. "Then why are you here?" Her smile widened, wider than a human mouth should go. "To collect what we marked 60 years ago, the families who escaped, the bloodlines we tagged. You've been living on borrowed time." "Tagged?" I stepped back. "Oh, yes. Why did you think Millbrook was spared? We marked you all. Let you breed, let you multiply, a long-term investment." She tilted her head. "Your grandmother was from here, wasn't she, Sarah Chen? Born 1964, right after we left?" My blood turned to ice. Grandma Chen had always been secretive about her childhood, said she didn't remember much before age 10. "She wasn't born," the woman continued. "She was placed. One of our early successes, a hybrid, designed to integrate, to breed, to produce offspring with the right potential." "You're lying." "Am I? Haven't you felt it? The otherness, the abilities trying to surface? Your 3rd generation, optimal harvest time." She stepped closer. "Your dreams aren't dreams, Sarah. They're genetic memories, inherited knowledge. You're becoming what we designed you to be." "We're not things," I shouted. "We're people." "You're both," she said simply. "That was the point. Human enough to survive here, different enough to serve our purposes, the perfect bridge between species." "We're not taking anyone," I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. "No," she laughed. It sounded like breaking glass. "You can't stop us with missing signs this time. We know exactly who we want, exactly where you are. The only reason we haven't collected is professional courtesy. We're giving you one last chance to organize yourselves, make it easier, less messy. Get out of our town." The words came from behind me. Morrison stood there with a dozen others, all holding hunting rifles, all steady despite their age. The woman's smile faltered for the first time. Weapons won't. Morrison fired, not at her, at the streetlight above. It exploded in a shower of sparks, plunging the street into darkness. When our eyes adjusted, they were gone, all of them, like they'd never been there at all. Morrison turned to me. Guns don't hurt them, but they don't like the dark. They need to see us to take us. That's the real reason they need addresses, landmarks, signs. Without light to navigate by, they're blind. How do you know? He smiled grimly. 1963. We figured it out by accident. Power went out during a town meeting. They were there, surrounding the building. But when the lights died, they just left. Couldn't function without visual reference points. Over the next 2 hours, we destroyed every streetlight in Millbrook, cut power to the street lamps, painted over reflective signs, anything that could guide them in the dark. By dawn, Millbrook was invisible. They came the next night. I watched from my darkened window as they moved through the streets. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, walking in perfect lines, searching. Their eyes glowed faintly, but it wasn't enough. They stumbled, they faltered. They couldn't find us in the maze we'd created. I heard them calling out addresses that no longer existed, names of families who'd moved or died. They were working from a list 60 years out of date, and without visual markers to guide them, they were lost. But then I noticed something else. Some of them weren't searching. They were waiting, standing in specific spots, not moving, like sentinels. They're marking positions, Janet whispered beside me, creating a new grid. She was right. They were memorizing the layout, learning our chaos, adapting. We had maybe one more night before they figured it out. Janet grabbed my hand as we huddled in my living room. Outside, one of them stood in what used to be my front yard. It called out in that too-perfect voice, "Sarah Chen, granddaughter of Subject 447, please report for collection." I held my breath. It stood there for an hour, then simply walked away, lost in the dark labyrinth we'd created. But before it left, it did something that chilled me to the bone. It left a mark on my door, a symbol that glowed faintly in the darkness, a symbol I recognized from my dreams, a symbol that meant found. By morning, they were gone, but the marks remained, on dozens of doors, all households with marked bloodlines. They'd found us. The darkness had only bought us time. That was 3 months ago. The signs never went back up. We navigate by memory now. Newcomers get hand-drawn maps that make no sense to outsiders. The Postal Service gave up on us. Amazon won't deliver here. But we're still here, still free, still human, mostly human, because the changes are accelerating. Janet's daughter can hear conversations from 3 houses away. The Morrison twins know when storms are coming days in advance. And me? I've started seeing the connections, the glowing threads from my dreams, the genetic patterns that link us all. Dr. Peterson thinks we have maybe 2 years before the changes become irreversible, before we become whatever they designed us to become. Some people have left Millbrook, trying to hide in big cities, trying to disappear in the crowd. But we get postcards sometimes, always the same message. They found me. Because it's not about addresses anymore. It's about what we are, what we're becoming. The official story is that vandals destroyed our infrastructure. The state allocated funds to replace everything. We took the money and spent it on other things. Security cameras that don't connect to any network, motion sensors that only we monitor, and lots of blackout curtains. Because they'll be back. Morrison is sure of it. Maybe in another 60 years, maybe sooner. They're patient, they're methodical, and they don't forget. Sometimes I wonder about Grandma Chen, about what happened to her before age 10, about why she could never remember, about what Subject 447 means, but mostly, I try not to think about it. Because if I think too hard, I remember the woman's parting words, the last thing she said before Morrison shot out the light. You can hide in the dark, but you can't hide your genetics. We know what you are now, what you're becoming, what we made you to be. I still work night shifts, still drive through the unmarked streets of Millbrook, but now I know why I sometimes see shadows that move wrong, why I hear sounds that don't match their sources. It's not exhaustion, it's inheritance. The signs are gone, the streets are dark, but sometimes, in the corner of my eye, I see addresses floating in the air, numbers that shouldn't exist, directions to places that were never mapped. And worst of all, sometimes I understand them. Sometimes I know exactly where they lead, to others like me, others like us. The marked ones scattered across the country, all feeling the pull, all fighting the change, all knowing that someday soon, we'll have to choose. Stay human and hide forever, or become what they made us to be. Last week, something new happened. I got a message, not on my phone, not in the mail, in my head, clear as day. Subject 448, integration period concluding, choice required, join willingly or be collected. Time remaining, 347 days. I've started a countdown on my wall. Others in town have too. We don't talk about it, but we all know what it means. The 60-year cycle. That was just phase 1, seeding. Phase 2 was integration. Letting us spread. Letting us breed. Letting the genetic modifications take hold. Phase 3 is harvest, and we're the crop. If you've made it this far, you might be wondering if this is just a story. If Millbrook is real, if any of this actually happened. Delete your GPS history. Blur your house on Google Maps. Take down your house numbers. And whatever you do, if someone comes to your door asking for an address that doesn't quite match, don't correct them. Let them stay lost. Because if they find what they're looking for, if they complete their collection, I don't think any of us want to know what comes next. Sweet dreams, everyone. And remember, that creaking sound outside isn't the wind. The wind doesn't know your grandmother's maiden name. But then again, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it is just a story. Maybe Millbrook doesn't exist. Maybe you can sleep soundly tonight. Just don't look up Subject 447. And definitely don't check if your grandmother was born in 1964. Trust me on that one. Actually, you know what? I changed my mind. Look it up, check your family records. See if anyone went missing in 1963. See if anyone in your family can't remember their childhood. And if you find something, if you discover you're connected, leave a comment below. We need to find each other. Before they come back. Before the 60-year cycle completes. Before... Oh no. There's someone at my door. At 3:47 a.m., knocking in a pattern I've never heard but somehow recognize. They're calling me Subject 448. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is, I want to answer. Something inside me wants to open that door. Something that's been dormant for 3 generations. Something that's finally waking up. I have to go. But please, share this story. Get it to as many people as possible. Because if I don't update in the next 24 hours, you'll know they found a way around the darkness. You'll know the signs didn't matter. You'll know. The knocking stopped. They're in the house. No, that's wrong. I'm in the house. But I'm also at the door. I'm in both places. I'm changing. The mark on my door is glowing brighter, calling to something inside me. Something Grandma Chen passed down. Something that's been waiting. Remember, we need to find each other. The marked ones, the subjects, the grandchildren of Millbrook, comment below. share this, subscribe for updates, because if I'm right, if we're what I think we are, we're not entirely human anymore. And that's exactly what they're counting on. That's exactly what they made us for. And God help me, part of me is starting to think, maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe, no, I'm still me. Still Sarah Chen, still human. But for how much longer? 347 days and counting. Find us, before we forget what we were, before we become what we are, before the harvest begins.